Welcome back, family and friends. Today we cover nonverbal communication as the second part of this interpersonal communication skills series. Nonverbal communications are the actions, nuances, suggestions that accompany verbal communication or express communication conveyed via emotion and body language without a single word being said. We all do this on a daily basis, and I consider it to be one of the most important factors of communication. As a matter of fact, studies show that 70 to 90% of all communication is nonverbal. So like it or not, our posture, our eye contact, facial expressions, and body movements or lack of convey and express communication inadvertently sometimes, or very much intentionally so. It is said that the greatest leaders that ever walked the earth had very little to verbally say, but exhumed power and authority through silence because of their non-verbal communication skills. They mastered intimidation through posture and poise, authority through physical movements and suggestions. Take the military salute, for example. No one knows exactly who or where it got started, but it is a tradition of respect that goes back to the Roman Empire. A code of honor, a single gesture with heavy emotional and physical significance, all with the power to rouse and inspire the hearts of millions over the centuries. Make no mistake, nonverbal communication is just as powerful as its counterpart. Hitler swore allegiance to the Third Reich through a salute that required extension of the right arm in the air, with a straightened right hand and palm facing down. The megalomaniac Napoleon Bonaparte made famous the hand in vest pose, which at the time was considered a manly boldness with tempered modesty, something his controlling persona would not allow anyone else to do while around him. Just a couple of history's most powerful characters who knew and used these nonverbal gestures to communicate power and control. The scenario is not much different between interpersonal relationships. Learned behavior from the alpha dominant in a relationship have far-lasting implications on said relationships. They are keen on displaying physical, nonverbal actions to communicate authority, just like the great leaders of the past empires. These behaviors are complex, but all of us, regardless of alpha or A-type personality designations, are forever bound by the physical language of emotions and the countless ways of saying nothing that conveys so much information. So with speech, it's not what you say as much as how you say it. The same rule applies with nonverbal communication. When you frown during the delivery of a joke, for example, you communicate misunderstanding of that joke at the least, and it can even be interpreted as disgust or dislike, depending on the severity of the frown. In the case of love, our most important conversation, the smallest gestures go an even longer way. Silence, when an answer is warranted, can say so much at the opportune time for lovebirds. I think all of us can agree that life is too short to be misunderstood, and one can even make the case that it is too short for silence. However, silence has its advantages, but because of its assumptive disposition, it leaves the mind to ponder on the possibility of its meaning, which can lead to confusion. So what's behind all of it? Well, besides the obvious thought process of an individual, their attitude is a directing factor behind body language and all types of nonverbal communication. Yes, no surprise there. Attitude determines mood, and as a result triggers the varying personality traits associated with non-verbal communication. Like everything else in life, this comes with a healthy balance of negative and positive attributes. The tipping of the scale and a person's attitude trigger can almost always be traced back to one singular traumatic experience. One so great that it will forever impose impediments in speech and nonverbal communication. In psychology, they call it post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD for short, clinically used to address more severe symptoms. I believe the same principles apply to just about every living being to some varying degrees of intensity and circumstance. For example, it has been estimated that 80% of women have been sexually molested at some point in their lives. I believe that number to be even higher, as I have been able to identify the traits of those affected by it and see it alarmingly across all socioeconomic backgrounds, nationalities, and personalities. It has no boundaries and had and will continue to have a lasting, dramatic effect on the psyche and ultimately attitudes of generations to come. Won't you agree this to be critical in the way we communicate to women on a whole? A sad reality of the society we have created. And this is just one example. So it is evident to me, family and friends, that we develop these body language traits through a combination of self-will and lots of experience, positive and negative, all having an effect on the mind with a scale that can be easily tipped. The difference, once again, lies in the person's ability to know themselves to the extent of being able to make affirmative decisions in regards to their attitude and ultimately what they eventually communicate. Knowing what you want in a rational, responsible, and realistic manner can prepare you for the attitude needed to be effectively communicated with others definitively. Erasing doubt from a person's perspective, it seems, is the goal to healthy dialogue of any kind. A scenario typically found between colleagues in the same line of work or profession, understandably so. Not something you find between rivals or opposing personality types, also understandably so. Hence the premise for opposite personality types being attracted to each other. The necessity to be right in a conversation is trumped by the fact that there are more stark differences than there are similarities. The urge to prove the other wrong from either given perspective is almost insatiable. Recognizing this tug of war in communication is essential to navigating a fruitful relationship. Family and friends, nothing should come easy in communication. Plotting a path of response, whether verbal or nonverbal, should require as much study of anything worth knowing in this world. Future generations, nations, entire societies, and overall health of the human race depends squarely on this fact, in my opinion. So family and friends, I say all this to say, discern your communication skills. Hone in on your ability to listen and comprehend. Control your emotions, ultimately your attitude when pondering a response. And take the time to think before responding in any way. You might just surprise yourself and prove yourself wrong in the conversation. Even muster to communicate remorse and actually say you're sorry. My best advice I can give anyone on being effective communicators is to see yourself from the other person's perspective. Try to reason why they see a particular thing a certain way. Take into consideration their experiences and expectations. Try to understand their view of life so that you may make yours as productive and eventful as possible, which I believe are the building blocks of legacy, the only thing you truly leave behind. With that said, family and friends, I hope I've brought some understanding to the importance of communication in all its forms. It has been for me a lifelong pet peeve as I strive to communicate as often, as efficiently as I can with everyone I know. My simple view is that life is too short to leave unspoken feelings, ideas, concerns, wants and wishes to imagination. Stay tuned for my next episode, Handling Depression, in my new series of Overcoming Fear. Until then, as always, family and friends, may you have a meaningful and purposeful week. God bless.